Hey there, this is Mr. Icarus, and welcome to yet another edition of Doom Mod Madness. What do you get when you mix Doom, a dollop of World War I, and a dash of 40k? You get Trenchfoot. No, not the actual affliction. Trust me, you do not want to be Google image searching that right now. You get the mod. Specifically, this mod right here. Now, in its current alpha form, Trenchfoot only has one available level, but boy, if it does not use that one available level to make an impact. Stepping into the shoes of a Master Templar, it is your task to reach the opposite end of the level, retrieve a key, and return to make your escape. Standing in your way, however, is a veritable army of demon-worshipping cultists, not to mention the varied abominations that accompany them in battle. Certainly, one of the first things that struck me about Trenchfoot, however, is just how it is positively oozing atmosphere. You'll note that this is a mod that chooses to forgo the typical trappings of having a soundtrack playing along while you blast your way through a level, instead choosing to populate the soundscape of the map with the distant thunder of rumbling explosions, the crackle of fire, the fizzling of flares, and of course, the ever-present popping of gunfire. The visuals certainly aren't too shabby either, the opening section of map here leading you through what else but an appropriately gloomy, corpse-ridden trench. Smoke from those aforementioned fires hangs heavy in the air, the concrete structures appropriately pockmarked with bullet holes, and you may even notice the wooden planks strewn across the floor of the trench itself, conceivably there to help prevent some poor bastard from getting himself stuck in the mud. It's all just really nice detail work, even if it is in service of a nightmarish war-torn hellscape. But were it even possible, you know that at this point, there are fates much worse than simply getting yourself stuck in the mud. This opening section not only introducing you to cultist troopers, but also axe-wielding maniacs, and the occasional flying, buzzing abomination. Not to mention a demonic freak lurking around the occasional corner, and if anything, this is a mod that will thoroughly instill a fear of blind corners in you. Nowhere is that more apparent than when you foray into the dugout at the halfway point of this map. Almost every corner finds you face to face with one of these screeching freaks. So numerous, in fact, were these encounters that I found myself developing some sort of nervous tick down here, every 90-degree blind corner subject to an exceedingly swift pivot lest I find a chunk of my face forcibly removed, and I didn't really become aware of that tick until I actually found myself in a room with multiple corners, but nothing screeching back at me once I rounded them. For all my efforts in the dugout, however, a yellow key door soon barred my path, prompting a return to the surface and an encounter with a new enemy type. Boasting a laser cannon for an arm and a reasonably chunky pool of health, this enemy type made me somewhat regret my over-reliance on the shotgun during the preceding section, but even then, given enough time and canny use of cover, you'll be able to bring it down with the much more abundant supply of pistol ammo. Deeper into the bunker, I found the enemy much more heavily entrenched, but my valiant efforts to dislodge them were thankfully rewarded with a rather satisfying LMG. Yellow key acquired, I was able to access the deeper part of the dugout, perforating a few screeching freaks as I go, before being unceremoniously spat out into the altogether more claustrophobic frontline trenches. Altogether, quite a tense section to navigate. It's got the limited maneuverability and visibility of the dugout section, but with the added threat of enemies being able to strike from above, both in irritating bugman form, as well as your standard soldiers able to peek over the edges of the trench itself. If you're curious, you can indeed take a peek over the top yourself, but I wouldn't really recommend it unless you fancy being shot at from every possible angle. After you cleave your way through the hordes of enemies clogging up this labyrinthine sequence of trenches, you will eventually find your way to a friendly trench. Not that I realized that at first, considering I nearly shot my nearest ally square between the eyes. But here you'll not only be able to take advantage of some helpful resupply, but also experience what essentially passes for a quiet moment during the course of this Trenchfoot map, witnessing this platoon of soldiers awaiting expectantly the inevitable attack, the trigger for which, of course, is you picking up the red key. Now, I have to admit, the carnage was not as immediate as I imagined. If anything, it's a bit of a deceptive slow burn. You hear the roar of soldiers as battle begins, but the quantity of enemies coming your way doesn't really feel overwhelming. Sure, they trouble the edges of the pit, but you feel like there's more than enough soldiers here to take care of business, and that's when it creeps up on you. Because all of a sudden, everyone was dead. Seriously, I blinked, and everyone was suddenly face down in the mud. The trenches filling up with cultists and freaks, and I did what any reasonable person would do in that situation. I decided to absolutely friggin' book it. Now, do you think they forgot about having the player do a return trip? No, they did not. This last section, though, does a genuinely great job of making you feel thoroughly hemmed in by enemy forces, like the circle is closing and you need to get out ASAP, which caused me to pretty much rush through this final section. I didn't want to take any chances. I had the key to get out. I ain't pissing about. Naturally, because I imagine we're not allowed to have nice things in this particular world, the red key opens up into a bunker full of death. All of your allies are dead, you've got a bunch of abominations to deal with, and let's not forget an additional handful of roided up laser cyborgs. As for Trenchfoot in its current form, however, that is pretty much all she wrote. But for an initial offering, there's just so much cool little detail here, all stuff that contributes to just drawing you in and just immersing you in this awful, grim, dark hellscape, and I, for one, look forward to more of it. It's got a ridiculously canny sense of atmospherics, it's got a real neat, understated style when it comes to the weaponry. You peek a little closer and you'll see there's some real neat animation going on there. As a level in its own right, it's pretty nicely paced. I like the idea that you can explore that dugout before you run into the locked door and have to double back and check the other route for the yellow key. And as for the overall look of it, it's awful. In the best possible way, taking advantage of some neat GZ Doom features, the lighting effects, particularly from things like fires and flares and warning lights, and overall it's some pretty damn good texture work, some real neat visuals strewn throughout this. So yep, definitely looking forward to more Trenchfoot, which is a phrase I never thought I'd ever say out loud, and yeah, just tremendously impressed by what's available in this initial offering. Very, very promising indeed, and if you're curious to get a sense of what it feels like to play through Trenchfoot for yourselves, you should know that the link, as usual, is in the description below. But until next time, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Feel free to let me know what you thought in the comments, and feel free to suggest any mods you'd like to see me cover in future editions of Doom Mod Madness. This has been Mr. Icarus. Thank you very much for watching. Icarus out.